Hey everybody, today we're talking about flaps. I'm Steve with FrSky, and this is an updated flap tutorial video. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about flaps and hopefully under a more understandable and realistic scenario. I've already went through and set up a plane. I went through the model setup, and I've gone in and I've done a couple things. I'll show you what I've done. The first one, if you want to edit this, all you'd have to do is long press on it, and I have selected an input. Usually when you set up a plane, there's no input, and you have to select either a slider or a switch or a knob as an input. In this particular example, I selected switch A, but switch D, but I really would like switch A, so I am going to move it to switch A. And just by flicking the switch, when you have this highlighted, it works. It will populate the proper switch. And as you can see, by looking right here, you can see that the flaps are now working. Now, they might be going the wrong direction. Maybe they're not doing exactly what you want them to do. So let's talk about how you get this all set up properly. Um, the second thing I should show you as well is that I changed the weights from 30%, which is default, to 100%. And because they're 100%, we've got the full extent of the flap. So you're going to go all the way from, in this particular example, it's going to go all the way from negative 100 to positive 100, which is absolutely what you're not looking for in flaps whatsoever, because what that means is that they'll go, when the switch is down, the flaps will go all the way down. When the switch is in the middle position, they'll go to back to centered, and when they're in the up position, they'll go to all the way up. So that means instead of being flaps, they're spoilerons. So this is not a very useful thing for us, and we need to go in there and create a custom curve, and it's pretty easy to do. We go in here and we select a curve, and we just go select it and select add curve. So it's the last thing there is add curve. We're going to name it flaps. I know it's a really creative name, but the type is going to be custom, and by default is 5-point. You want a 3-point curve, so you select it and move this down to 3 points. Now, the first point should be 0, and that would be where the flaps would come down. It starts off at level, and then the next point is going to be, it could be negative 50%, and the third point could be negative 100%. The only problem with that is that maybe your plane does not like having 100% flaps, and maybe you don't want to fly 100% flaps. So what I suggest is, why don't we start off at negative, we'll call this negative 40%. So, and then we're going to make the last one negative 80%. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is some people will say to me, hey, I like a scooch less flaps. I want them to go down not so much. You might say, after flying your plane for a while, like, I'd rather have, instead of being 80%, I want it to be all the way down to 60%. So you can go back in here and you can move this right back to 60%. And maybe what you want is, instead of being at 40% for your first one, maybe you only want it to be like, let's say 15%. And what you have here is a nonlinear curve. So you can see that this is position 1, and maybe position 1 is on point 2 would be your takeoff flaps, and then the negative 60% of your landing flaps. So that might be something worthwhile playing with. But again, these numbers are up to you. They can be negative 100%, so you get the full travel of the flaps, and that's useful if you're flying turbine jets, for example, where you want to have as much stopping power as possible. We're going to return out of this, and what we have now, if we hit switch A, is you can see that I have flaps up, flaps in position 1, flaps in position 2. Okay, so it's working. We're going to look now at the outputs channel. So I'm going to hit return. And I have a slow computer today. And there we go. This is a problem with the actual program itself, not really a program with Ethos, a problem with Ethos. This is a simulator, so sometimes things don't work as fast as I like them to. Anyway, we're going to look now, and I'm going to hit the flap switch, and you can see that it's going from 0. So you're looking at flaps on channels 6 and 7. So it's going to negative 15%, and it's going to negative 60%. Okay, and these things are jumping very quickly. So what that means is that your flaps are moving as fast as they possibly can, which in reality is not the way you probably want your flaps set up. We're going to go back in the mixer one more time. We'll go into flaps. We're going to go back into edit. And there's this thing called slow up and slow down. So we have slow up is right here. And so I typically, I like to have the verbiage work with what it does. So slow down usually is how it comes, in my opinion, it's flaps coming down, and up is flaps coming up. So, but the thing is, you have to check this. And what you do is you go in here, and I'm going to say that I want the flaps to come down in a nice 2.5 second time frame. The reason I want slow is because when the flaps come down, I want to have some time to react to it. If they come down very quickly, then the plane can balloon up, and then you're stuck trying to manage your elevator. And then flaps up, I want that to be as fast as possible. I'm going to say that's going to be a 0.6 of a second. I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and we can see the things moving, the outputs. So it's coming down nice and slow. It's taking 2.5 seconds to come down to the 60, and then it comes back very quickly at 0.6 of a second back to 15, 0.6 of a second back to 0. Slow coming down for negative 15% flaps, and then the negative 60% is another 2.5 seconds. I should also mention that's 2.5 seconds from the time from 0 all the way to negative 100. So we're not getting a full 2.5 seconds on that. If this is still not too fast for you, what you can do is you can come in here and you can move this up to maybe 4 seconds. And we'll go back, hit return, we'll go back down. Now we'll try it again. You can see it's fast coming back up, slower coming down. And to me, that would be kind of like the speed at which I would like the flaps to work. Okay, so we have our speed, we have our outputs. Now, let's just imagine that you have, let me take it back to mixer, even though I kind of hesitate because here we go, into outputs. We're going back into outputs. I want to show you something. If your flaps are going up instead of down, you have spoilerons, and maybe it's only going up on one of the 2 channels. So how do you fix that? You can just invert it like that if it's on one of the 2 channels. Now, if they're on both channels, instead of doing that, what you would most likely do is go back into the mixer and go back into flaps. And remember the curve that we had? We're going to edit that curve, and the 3 points in the point config, you can see that they're negative values, but if they're going upwards, you can change these to positive values. I'll change the 15% back down to a positive 15%, and right about here we got that, and then positive 60% on this one. Now if the flaps were going up before, now they should be going down. And it's nice and slow on the PC, I should tell you. This is, when you do it on the radio, it's a lot faster. But simulator really slow at this thing. Okay. Last thing I want to show you is when you get back to the outputs. Now, let's just imagine that instead of hitting the 0 mark, it is somehow maybe a little bit above or a little bit below where it should be on the wing. You want it to be perfectly level. Well, there's a couple ways you can do that to level it out. If it has a clevis, you can unscrew it or first of all, take the clevis off the control horn, then unscrew it or screw it, whichever direction you need it to go, so that it is level with the wing. To me, that's the best way to do things. I do not like using sub trims. I try to do mechanical trims on all my control surfaces whenever possible. But let's just imagine you're off by about a degree and it's not really worth fighting. So what you can do is you can come in here, go into your sub trims, and let's say it was off 0.8%. We'll call it 0.8%. All right. So if you did that, and as you adjust this number, you can see the flaps move up to hopefully in the right position. I still say that if you're getting numbers like this, where you're over 2 or 3%, you're not getting the full benefit of the center of that servo. And I would really suggest that you do a mechanical trim. The first thing you do before you do the mechanical trim is set this back to 0 by hitting default. Then go in there and then tighten or loosen the clevis when it's off the control horn, and you will get it situated properly. And with that, that should be pretty much everything you need to know about flaps. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And I do thank you for watching.